Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your space for black news, views, and opinions. Today is Tuesday, March 15th. I'm Seth Lemon.
I am Romeo, and Seth, good to have you back in the building, man.
Thank you,
Good
sir.
to have you back, Seth. I'm Demi Lobo, and on today's report, as Russia's bombardment of Ukraine continues and moves further west, hitting civilian targets, the West targets Russian military leaders with new sanctions. But is it enough? Meanwhile, Breonna Taylor's mom pleads for help from the Justice Department, why she has not given up on her quest for justice. Then the family of Emmett Till is calling for charges, why they say the person responsible still has not been held accountable 70 years after his death.
Plus, the size of the black population is growing, but not in cities or states you might imagine. What census data is revealing about a new great migration, and the financial fallout from inflation is trickling down to consumers as businesses pass on the cost. How rideshare apps are lifting prices to combat the sudden surge. Soulmates, we have all of that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
Talks continue today, hopefully, to end the violence in Ukraine, though it seems like a long shot. An advisor to Ukraine's president says that negotiators will discuss a ceasefire and the immediate withdrawal of troops. It's the fourth round of talks between Russia and Ukraine, but Russia continues bombing cities, targeting residential neighborhoods, even in the west. Two powerful explosions rocked Kyiv before dawn, and a huge fire engulfed a high-rise apartment in flames as it was struck by artillery. First responders, they tried to douse the blaze and evacuate trapped residents, but at least 2 civilians were killed. Despite reducing some of these cities to rubble, a retired U.S. Army general predicts Russia is starting to run low on everything from ammunition to manpower. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, he's on his way to Belgium for meetings with NATO partners, and his trip comes as Ukrainian President Zelensky will make a direct appeal to Congress for more support tomorrow, speaking over video conference to House and Senate members. And now, Biden also considering a trip to Europe for face-to-face talks with allies about how they can support Ukraine. Now, Biden and Secretaries Austin as well as Blinken are several of about a dozen administration officials who were sanctioned by the Russian government today. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Hunter Biden also on that list of sanctions that prohibits travel and freezes their assets in Russia, but it's largely symbolic. I mean, Hunter Biden is not a cabinet member, neither is Hillary Clinton. She's not a federal government official at this point anymore. It's interesting to see, though, that despite all of the setbacks that Putin has faced with the stalled convoy and the tanks running out of gas and what seems like a lack of support and enthusiasm from Russian people for this, he has not let up. And he is continuing his attacks now further west, targeting places that, like yesterday or the day before, just 15 miles from the Polish border. This is getting very tense.
Very, very tense, very close. Also, a lot of people have just been having to sit back and watch their homes burn. A place that they grew up, losing everything right now. Over 3 million people have fled Ukraine since the invasion began, but the people who are most affected by this are the children. So although people are fleeing, able to flee, they still are displaced now. They don't have anywhere to go. 97 children as of this morning have died as a result of this in Ukraine. And so Biden did tweet that he's going to make sure that Ukraine has missiles, that they have weapons, that they have money, that they have food. And he also says that the U.S. is going to welcome any refugees with open arms. So that is good. If they come to the U.S., that we will make sure that they're okay and take care of them.
We definitely will. We're talking 20 days in. And Putin's just showing his frustration. Like, there's areas that should be off limits when it comes to war. You see how he's hitting the buildings where people are living, and he does not care. He's very frustrated with that. He doesn't want the truth to get out. We've lost a journalist. We've lost a cameraman. All this is adding up to Putin is running out of gas. He's running, like you say, ammunition. He's running out of time for his military men. And we don't know what's going to happen at that point. Will he eventually give in and back away? We're not sure. That's something he doesn't want to do, but it doesn't look like he's winning this battle with everything that's going on.
It's very scary when someone gets desperate, like he seems like he is.
Someone
right
deranged and desperate.
Yes.
Absolutely. Breonna Taylor's mother is asking the Justice Department to investigate the shooting that led to her daughter's death in 2020. Tamika Palmer, along with attorney Ben Crump and others, met with Kristen Clark, the head of the DOJ Civil Rights Division, yesterday. They want all 3 officers involved in the botched raid put on trial.
Americans have the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure in their homes, the right to peaceable enjoyment of your home, to have your home invaded, to not know in the middle of the night. And in other communities, people talk about standing their ground and the right to bear arms. But seems like those rights are not equally applicable to women of color and black women.
The meeting comes 2 weeks after the acquittal of former Louisville officer Brett Hankinson. Hankinson was charged with wanton endangerment for firing 10 bullets into Taylor's apartment that exited a neighbor's house. No one has been charged directly in the death of Breonna Taylor. And so, of course, we must start off by saying, say her name. The fact that we're this far out and still no justice is so disheartening. And so her mother did say that this is bigger than Breonna. This is bigger than Breonna. If no one addresses the issue, they'll keep kicking down our doors and murdering us. But I hate that her mom kind of has to, in a way, diminish the fact that this is about your daughter. This is about her, and you are totally fine and within your right to say that this is about your daughter. And I hate that she has to, you know, you get what I'm saying? Like, it is about your daughter at the end of the day.
It is. I think I'm upset that the meeting only lasted 45 minutes. This is 2 years after this happened. She's been dead for 2 years and a couple of days now. And you're telling me that the attorneys at the Civil Rights Department at the Department of Justice only had 45 minutes to give to Tamika to talk about her daughter who was killed so wantonly? That strikes me as odd.
It hurts your heart as a parent. I understand what they are going through. And look, you want answers and you want justice. It's hard to go on living knowing that something happened like this to your child, whose job was to care for people, and they're still not caring for her, even though she's not here. Makes no sense. All right, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is admitting she went to the January 6th rally to precede the deadly riot at the Capitol. Jennie Thomas, who is a conservative activist, told the Washington Free Beacon newspaper she got cold feet and left the Stop the Steal rally before Donald Trump took the stage. Thomas said she was disappointed by the violence at the Capitol. Her comments come after a recent New York Times story said Thomas had a large role in the preparation of the event. Thomas said she had no role in planning or leading the rally.
A Democratic group says that Donald Trump is running for president without officially declaring his candidacy. The DNC Super PAC has filed a formal complaint with the Federal Elections Commission, accusing Trump of violating campaign finance law. They say the former president, the impeached president, is using his existing political committee to advance a presidential run without formally announcing it. Trump has repeatedly teased his supporters about running for office again.
Meanwhile, the Department of Justice is asking a judge to drop charges against an alleged Capitol rioter. They admit prosecutors failed to schedule a timely hearing for Lucas Denny. The Justice Department says they unintentionally violated Denny's speedy trial rights, leaving him in jail since December. But prosecutors are also asking for permission to charge Denny again for allegedly attacking a U.S. Capitol police officer. Defendants and their lawyers have been complaining about stalled trials.
The family of Emmett Till is calling for the woman who accused him of whistling and touching her 66 years ago to be charged with murder. Till's family gathered at the Mississippi State Capitol Friday, calling for Carol and Brian Donham to be charged. They delivered a petition to the state's attorney general calling for him to charge Donham. Now, in 2018, a book, The Blood of Emmett Till, alleges Donham admitted she lied to her husband, Roy Bryant, about Till grabbing at her. Till, who was 14 at the time, was kidnapped, beaten to death, and thrown into a river. Brian and another white man were acquitted by an all-white jury. You think about, she's 88 years old right now, and she's had a family, she's had a life, she's had 2 kids. What about Emmett Till's family? This is the thing we're fearing with Breonna Taylor's family, right? Years, decades gone by, and still no justice. There's still a chance to try and make some right of this situation that was truly so wrong, right?
Yes, and you know, right now there are a lot of people who are connecting Emmett Till and Jussie Smollett's situation together. One of those, actress Taraji Henson, she's been fighting very strongly online. She's been pretty much saying that she's not here to debate whether or not Jussie Smollett is right or wrong, but she's connecting it, saying that Emmett Till, he died and was murdered due to a lie, and there were no legal, ramifications for that lie for this white woman. And so she's, kind of trying to connect the two. A lot of people aren't aren't really here for the connection. But I mean, she does have a point here. This lady does deserve some type of, something needs to happen.
That's not the point that Taraji was making, though. And I know we're going to talk about this story a little bit later, because I think that it is quite the reach to connect anything to do with Emmett Till to Jussie Smollett.
I agree.
All right, the two things are not anywhere close to each other, and black people should just stop making those comparisons altogether. Leave it alone, Taraji. Love you, my Howard sister. But 70 years after Emmett Till was killed, we are just now again finally seeing some kind of push for justice, and they're saying this isn't about vengeance, but Carolyn Bryant is still alive.
Yeah,
and she admitted that she lied about this. So it's just strange. I don't know what the statute of limitations are on this, but Emmett Till's murder was never solved, and it makes sense that if Bryant is still alive, that she could potentially be charged as an accomplice in this heinous crime.
Absolutely.
All right, moving along. Department of Justice lawyers are asking a judge to keep a former Proud Boys leader in jail all until his trial. In an argument to a judge Monday, prosecutors say releasing Tarrio would be a threat to the community. Federal prosecutors say they found notes that contained a detailed plan to surveil and storm government buildings around the Capitol on the day of the insurrection. Tarrio, he's the most high-profile person charged in connection with the January 6 attacks. Although he was in Baltimore at the time, prosecutors say he coordinated with other far-right groups during that attack.
Major police chief organizations are throwing their support behind Judge Katanji Brown Jackson. In a letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee members, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, they urged senators to confirm Jackson to the Supreme Court. The group says the judge has worked to protect communities in the interest of justice. The endorsement comes as Republicans are calling Jackson soft on crime because she once worked as a public defender.
The New Hampshire primary and Iowa caucus have traditionally led off the race for the White House for decades. But if Democratic activists have it their way, things will change. Now, the Democratic National Committee Rule and Bylaws Group met last week to discuss a possible shakeup in how the party nominates presidential candidates. Now, critics say Iowa and New Hampshire are not representatives of the nation with their 90% white populations. Some want a Super Tuesday like Election Day, which would put Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada primaries all on the same day. President Biden did poorly in Iowa and New Hampshire in 2020. He was considered by many to not have a chance at the nomination, but South Carolina's majority black electorate saved Biden's political career.
Texas officials say more than 18,000 mail-in ballots were rejected in this month's primary elections, mostly because of new ID requirements. The state's largest county saw a significant spike in the rates of rejected mail-in ballots, going from 6% to 22% in some of those counties. State election officials, they say they are opening an investigation into what happened. Those ballots, some of them finally added to the tally last week, but there's other bad news coming out of Houston and Harris County. Nearly 20% of ballots cast in March were rejected by machines, many because of new vote-by-mail requirements that include people putting social security numbers and driver's license numbers on the top of that balloted envelope. Analysts say people either missed the notice to include both on the envelopes or felt uncomfortable having their personal information on the ballot.
A white Maryland Democratic Party official is stepping down from her position after being criticized for doubting the chances of an African-American winning the state's governor's race. Black Democrats in the state called for Barbara Goldberg Goldman to step down. Goldman has apologized, and 3 black men are running to replace Republican Governor Larry Hogan. While black people make up 31% of the state's population, Hogan beat former NAACP President Ben Jealous in 2018, and he beat him by 12 percentage points.
Idaho is falling behind Texas with its own law that relies on citizens to enforce a ban on abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. The Idaho House approved the bill 51-14. It's the latest law by confident anti-abortion activists that anticipate the U.S. Supreme Court will either pare back or overturn Roe v. Wade. The Idaho bill is different than the Texas bill. While the Texas law allows citizens to sue anyone who helps a woman get an abortion around 6 weeks, the Idaho bill allows family members to sue an abortion provider. Most women are not aware they're pregnant at 6 weeks.
Mississippi is the latest state to ban the teaching of critical race theory in state classrooms. Governor Tate Reeves falsely said too many schools around the nation are teaching the so-called critical race theory. Senate Bill 2113, it forbids public schools in the state from forcing students to agree that any sex, religion, or race is inherently superior or inferior. GOP lawmakers, they've used critical race theory, which is only taught in law school, as a political boogeyman.
A group of black families in Oregon are pulling their kids out of school districts because of repeated acts of racism. A local newspaper has documented 148 incidents of bias against African Americans and other non-white students in Bend, LA Pine, Oregon's school system. Things have gotten to the point that black parents say they fear for their children's safety. 30 of those bias incidents were directed at black students. The report says racial slurs and other forms of harassment have been directed to black students more this school year than ever before.
A North Carolina school superintendent is apologizing for a mock slave auction that took place at his school. A parent reported the auction, which took place early this month at J.S. Waters School in Goldston, North Carolina. Community activists held a rally protesting the auction. Black students were reportedly sold to other students. The school is 68% white with only 12% of the student population black. Superintendent Anthony Jackson says he has a plan that will start with the healing process. Jackson says he will make sure it never happens again. You know, we've reported stories like this before in the past here on Fox Soul's Black Report, hoping it would never happen again, but it seems to happen over and over. I've had conversations with my son. I'm like, if something happens like this at your school, one, you don't participate. Two, you ask to go to the principal's office and you contact your parents. There's even one we talk about now that people are you can see on social media where a white kid was throwing cotton at a black student and then whipping him with a belt. Where are they getting this idea from, this information? And you wonder why we really want to teach about racism in schools, why we want to show people the good and the bad. This is a problem, and it continues to get even worse in 2022.
I mean, we're talking about critical race theory. I'm sure that's where you're going here, Romeo. Critical race theory is teaching, is learning in a school book, maybe some class assignments. This was literally actual acts of racism that these students had the opportunity to perform. And so, Romeo, I'm also with you. Where did these students learn this from? Where did you see this at? Because you had to emulate this from something. Who taught you where to do this and how?
Yeah, and we know that critical race theory isn't taught at the elementary primary level at all. It's not taught in high school either. It's a collegiate level, a graduate level really for law school theory that was created at Harvard University to examine the things that people experience through the race of lens. It's not at all what these children are doing, and in this case, a school being 70% white, whose idea was it to hold a mock slave auction? It just seems silly, and it's almost like they're trying us now.
I really feel like that way too. And then you see some of the staff people that were there, they're the ones that videotaped it.
Right.
Why not intervene and say, hey, what are we doing? This is wrong.
Yeah, and for a parent to have to, she said she had to explain to her biracial son why he should not have to suffer this kind of racism in silence. I mean, I hope that he's able to maybe find a better school environment that is more conducive to learning about his greatness.
Right, yeah.
All right. An Indiana court is changing a death certificate of a black man who was lynched about 100 years ago. In 1922, a 19-year-old, George Tompkins, he was found hanging from a tree with his hands bound behind him. This was in an Indianapolis city park. The coroner at the time said Tompkins' death was a suicide and no one was ever investigated or arrested. Last weekend, however, the document was officially changed to reflect a homicide. Tompkins had moved from Kentucky to Indianapolis, Indiana, to create a new life. Members of the Indiana Remembrance Coalition who pushed for the change say they aren't sure why Tompkins was killed, but they are certain it was racially motivated. Congress gave final passage to a bill making lynching a federal crime just last week.
The LAPD is investigating an arrest of a man who was tackled by cops as he ran from them with his infant son. The video we are about to play may be disturbing to some. The incidents, it happened last month. Police were chasing Josue Huerta down the street and tackled him. Officers say they did not know where Huerta was carrying that he was carrying a child at the time. Now, the child was treated for a small skull fracture. It's not known if the child was injured during the chase or when his father crashed a vehicle into another car minutes before that foot chase. The baby tested positive for cocaine and fentanyl. Now, Huerta faces several charges, including 1 count of child abuse and possession of narcotics.